This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, I think yesterday we discussed about different types of navigations, and also while especially navigating to a new record base, how we can pre-populate the some of the values. So we saw that in the last session. So for that, the main thing we need to use standard one of the standard component, which will allow us to supply the default values what we give in an encoded way. So we need to use that, and we have to encode those default values and the encoded values. This we are using mainly for encoding purpose. So we need to set to the state. State is like some parameters to add to this. So we are just adding that values, and I think it is working fine. So now today, so what I want to explain from one lightning component, how we can navigate to the other lightning component. It's not about embedding one component into other component. Already we saw that, and maybe dynamically creating the component, that also we saw. How from one component we can navigate to the other component, and also while navigating, how we can supply the some of the values. Okay, that I want to maybe explain. One of the way to open a component by pre-populating the some of the attributes is using this navigation. Okay, so to make that possible, to first of all the component to which you want to navigate, that component should allow the navigation. Okay, so there is an interface. If you go to component library, and here go to interfaces, your list of interfaces. So let's say there is an interface called URL addressable. Okay, one of the interface. So all we need to do to allow the component to whatever the component you want to navigate, that component should be inherited with the URL addressable. Yeah, so this is the interface. At mostly exactly same thing with the same structure, we need to create a component. So maybe to make it easy, let's maybe copy this and alter this as per our requirement. Okay. So now maybe I'm giving the name plus F1 URL addressable. Let's say this is the name I'm going to use. Our component URL addressable, and this is the name I give. And maybe let me copy so that to make it very quick. So here maybe it is using maybe ID. Let's say I want to maintain some other, let's say first name and last name or whatever. You can add multiple attributes. This component is having this attribute.
Hello, Srini. The screen is freezed and not able to hear you. Is it happening with everybody?
Yeah, he's having some technical difficulties, I
Yep.
guess.
Yeah. It's more time.
My side, I also have the same problem.
Yeah, the message came on his screen. The organizer is experiencing technical difficulties.
Hello.
I should.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So I think internet is disconnected. Okay. Yeah. So value change. So based on the one of the attribute. Okay. Now maybe here page reference. This is one of the attribute. Actually, that page reference attribute will be available whenever we inherit this interface. So within that interface, by default, system maintains a attribute with the name page reference. So when you inherit this, directly that attribute we can access. So what it is doing in that default attribute, whatever available due to this interface, if there is a change in that page reference, basically when this URL, it will detect that and it is going to call one of the function. That's what it will do. Whenever there is a change in the attribute value, if you want to execute some function logic, that time we have to use this value change event. While referring, we refer as change, and as a value, we give due to which attribute you want to call the function. So that attribute. Okay, so either on load
Just one
or
question here, Srini. This change will be only for a particular field, first name, or any of the field. Now, incidentally, we have just taken a first name. Assume that we have taken first name, last name, email, and all those things. So it will be for any one of them or all of them,
so any
or
attribute,
particularly for some any attribute.
any attribute.
Mhm.
Let's say if I refer first name only when there is a change in the first name, it will fire. It will handle. Okay. So if I maybe mention last name, when there is a change in the last name, only that time this will be handled and it will call this function. It's like that. Okay. Basically for any attribute. Okay.
Okay, but
Uh,
will it be executed each time, or now suppose if I want to make a changes entire into the form, say out of 5 field, I want to make changes into the 3 field. So whenever each time if I make a change into first field, so it will execute. Then again I'll make change into second field, it will execute, or it will execute after all the 3 fields have been updated.
no. See, I think if you see, let's say if I define 5 attributes, okay,
Hmm.
5 attributes, this is not going to fire for all the 5, right? Here you are
Exactly.
mentioning here, if you mention like this will be called only if there is a change in the first name, right?
Okay. Okay.
Let's say like that, if you define 5 attributes, for remaining attributes, if you change that time also in order to fire,
Okay. I need to
again you
copy
need,
it multiple statement for each attribute. Say last name
yeah,
over here. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like
Got
that.
it. Got it. Got it. Thank you.
Okay. So now I think this one, and now let's maybe define this JS. Go to controller. Maybe I'm using the same name component. Okay, so basically, so here if we see this example, again, they are finding the value of the page reference, and in that URL, page reference is nothing but URL. So while navigation from wherever the component is initiated to navigate here, is that component is applying any parameters. So it is reading the page reference, the URL. From that URL, the values, whatever they supply, will be inside state. From there, I think it is reading and adding. Okay. So here, if you want to do the same thing, component.get, to get the attribute value, we say component.get, and so maybe system maintain a attribute with that name. This is like a complete URL. From that URL, so whatever the values they are going to supply will be in state. Okay, what is the name they supplied? So that name. And basically, I think I'm not sure why they are using C underscore underscore. I think that might be the namespace. So I think always it needs a namespace. Okay, let's say we are going to supply a parameter with the name first name. Okay, so maybe whatever. So from still we have to do that by creating one more component while navigating to this. Assume that this is what we are going to supply. So this value, let's say we are going to assign to this attribute. Right? The component dot set v dot to this attribute we are going to supply whatever the other component while navigating supply. So that is what the logic, same thing here they are using. Okay. Now let's maybe save it. Deploy. Okay, so it is deployed. So now let's define one more component from where we are going to navigate to this. Okay. So let's say maybe I'm going to create with the name one or a component URL addressable navigator. Let's say that's the name I'm giving. Okay, so from this component, we initiate calling that component. Okay, now here, so all we do, maybe on clicking on one of the button, we'll write the logic to navigate to that one. Okay, so now here, first on loading of this component, as soon as we load, I want to prepare that URL exactly where it has to navigate. That we automatically, when this component is initiated that time, I want to prepare the page reference, the URL where it should go. Okay. So let's see. Okay, so or maybe when you click on the button, that point of time also you can prepare. Let's say when we click only on that point of time, we prepare. Okay. Now all I am doing, I'm introducing one of the button. So lightning button label. Let's say navigate to a component. That is the button label I'm giving. On click, I'm calling one of the JavaScript function. So navigate to custom component. Let's say that is the name of the JS function I'm going to give. Now on click on this button, right in the JS controller. So this is the name of the function. So here we need to construct the page reference, right? Like our here how we constructed in the same. let's say we take this one as a reference, right? So copy the same way. Let's say this is the name I'm giving. Okay. So now, in order to navigate to, we are not navigating to a record or something. We are navigating to a component. So here, how we need to give standard component like this. Okay. You can also maybe, if you refer documentation, you will see the list of values supported for the type. Again, I'm not doing that. Okay. So it will be like standard underscore underscore component. So like that we have to give. And in the attribute, we have to give the attribute as component name. Again, practically we cannot remember. Okay, you can always read the documentation. Okay, so name and the name of the component. So here we have to give the namespace C underscore underscore. What is the name of the component we need to navigate? Addressable, right? This component URL addressable. Make sure that that component is implemented a interface URL addressable. Okay, and also, so whatever the parameters we want to supply, right, either single or multiple, we can supply from here. Okay. So somehow maybe this is expecting, as per the examples, I think it is always expecting the namespace, something like that. So let's say we are going to supply the first name. Okay. So you can maybe supplying one of the first name. Now, if you see, so this is the page reference. So here maybe instead of object, here we are using component. That's the difference, and maybe attribute component name. This is what you want to supply. Yeah, this is the one. So now, so in order to maybe navigate, right? We have the navigation service. For sure, we have to use that. Okay, so here let's define the navigation, something like how we use it here. What is that? Navigation service in the same way. Right? If you remember, here for this navigation service, if you want to generate the URL, again, go to the controller of this. Okay, so if you want to generate the URL, I think generate URL, one of the function is there. Directly based on the page reference to navigate. So what we do, component.find. What is the name of the navigator, the navigation service? This one. Dot. There is a method called navigate. Okay, directly we'll say navigate and give the page reference where it needs to navigate. Right? So if you want to generate URL, I think generate URL, one of the function. If you go to Lightning navigation component reference, you can see, right? So now I'm giving. So now what will happen on click on this button? So this is a page reference, and these are some values. For now, I'm hard coding, and it will be navigated to that component. Okay, let's see really that is happening or not. So first, let me this one. Let's deploy. It is deployed. So maybe I want to use this in to make sure we have everything in one place. Let's say here I'm going to refer that. Here to navigate to a custom component. Okay, here I'll refer that component, URL navigator, that component, URL addressable navigator into that. That I am referring here. So that means we see the button, what we are showing, and click on that. We'll be navigating to a component where we implemented the URL addressable, right? And also we are supplying a parameter value. Here we see hello, the name, whatever we are supplying. Okay. So now let's save this one. So left side, right click and deploy. Maybe for you to understand and easily, at present we are discussing this. Maybe we are using some components inside this. URL addressable. This is one component. And maybe we are not maintaining any like a child, right? So navigate from here. It is navigating to this. So these are the things we are dealing. So anyway, now let's see, right? On the UI, if you go here and see, here this is our component navigation container. Here we have added that URL addressable navigator component where it shows the button. Okay, so navigate to component. If everything is fine, and click on this. Right on click on this, it's supposed to so navigate to that. Maybe let's see. So what is wrong? So I'm clicking on this navigate to a component. So I'm not seeing anything is happening. Let's see how we debug. Control P, URL addressable navigator JS, open that. So this is what it will. So now try to click on this. So I'm seeing that this is not at all calling now on click. Okay, so I think on the UI, are we really calling that? Let's remove this. This is the one. Okay, here I made a mistake. It is supposed to be C dot, right? So that's the one of the bug. Deploy. Go back. Just to refresh. Okay, now click on this. Okay, so I think now it is calling. Proceed. If you see here, hello, that component, just where hello and the v dot first name. Whatever we supplied, it is showing. If you see, this is the URL. Right in URL, you see like this, it is supplying the parameters. Multiple parameters can be supplied. Okay, so it's like that. So that is right one of the example which might be useful. So with this, so let's maybe close this navigations concept. There are some other ways like how to navigate to a web page. Few things I want you to explore more and do that. Okay, but this is more than sufficient. Okay, so that's it. We are done with this example. Now let's focus on the other main concepts. Okay. So before we start the other concept, any questions, anyone so far? Okay. So now one of the next example. Okay. Sometimes or many times in the projects, after creating the Aura component or the Lightning Web component, we need to keep those inside the Visual Force space. How we can keep our Aura component inside the Visual Force space? And also, if needed, sometimes we need to show our information to a public user. Without logging into Salesforce, someone having the URL, they should be able to see that page and see our login. So that how we achieve, we will see as part of this example. Okay, for this, maybe simply, so far I think we did not develop any search component, right? Searching for the information in the database and getting the results based on the search. Let's maybe introduce one of that component. Okay. Now I'm creating, press F1, we are creating a component. First we focus on the functionality. Once we achieve the searching functionality in the component, we'll see how exactly we can embed that in the Visual Force space. After embedding in Visual Force also, we should work in the same way. Okay, so for that, I'm creating one Aura component. Let's say I'm using this contact search. We are going to embed in Visual Force space. Yeah, I'm just using the name. Okay, so now this is a form. So now, so here develop some UI. Okay, so where let me use maybe one of the card, and then the card what I'll show. So far the form we are showing one after other, each and every input in one row, one input, and other row, other input. Now I want to make this in same row. Same row I should be able to enter the, let's say, based on either email or mobile number. We should be able to search for one of the contact, whether the contact is present in the database or not. If there is a contact in the database, maybe so we show the results of it. Okay. Now quickly I'm taking this. I'm just taking so lightning card. I'm giving some title. Say contact search. This is the title I'm giving. Okay. In this, let's say I want to introduce email, mobile, and also the button to search. Right. So now to arrange the elements, right? So in one row, how many elements we want to show, all those things we deal using lightning layout. Lightning layout. So how I want to spread in the lightning layout, whatever the items I'm going to use should spread across multiple rows. To make that possible, we have to give multiple rows is equal to true. Okay, now each and every layout item what we give will spread to the multiple lines. Okay, so now inside this I'm taking lightning layout item. Okay, so let's say in this I'm going to display first name. And so lightning input label first, sorry, maybe email, right? Email and mobile. Email name which is optional. If you want, you can give. And maybe to identify this, I'm giving some local ID using Aura ID. Let's say email. So that's it. Okay. So now in the same way, copy mobile name. I'm giving mobile. Okay, but type, it's always better to maintain type. If you don't mention, by default it is like a text. It should be email type, right? Email, and this is a mobile, right? So it's like, if you see documentation, you can find that. Okay. So now we need one more lightning item for switch. We need a button for that. So lightning button label. Let's say we'll say switch. Okay, on click. On click, we are going to call a function. Still, we did not define. We are going to define. C dot. Let's say on switch. That's a function. Okay. And also, I want to see this in the blue color. So variant brand means it will show in the blue color. Okay. Now deploy. Maybe quickly I want to see the preview of this. Go to developer console. I think this is not our account, right? Okay, this is our account. Okay, so now here consech is the component name. This is the component. Okay, maybe to apply the styles already we have the preview. How it is looking? Okay, but that's not good. So what we do, I don't want the labels first of all. So let's remove the labels. So if you don't want to have the labels, go back. So we have variant for lightning input. Okay, variant label hidden. Okay, label stacked, label hidden, label horizontal. Those are the some of the values. So maybe really no need to remember what you do. Go to lightning. So it is input. Go to input. Click on input. So here when you see, we'll see how exactly that will work. Okay, I'm using to go to the variant. So here label hidden to hide the label. Right? So maybe label inline, I think. Label inline will show the label horizontally. Left side label, right side. Okay. So like that. Maybe I'm using this, right? Label hidden. So it will hide that label. Okay. So now let me hide the label for mobile also. But if you hide the label, so how user knows that what to enter in this? So for that we have placeholder. Okay. So we can enter placeholder text. Placeholder here. I'll say enter email. In this placeholder. Right. So that means here inside that this will show the placeholder, whatever text we enter that one. Enter mobile Now when you deploy, go back and just refresh. Right now, okay, but still it is not that much good, right? So now I think this by default it is we don't know if we have the width as 12 parts. It is not maybe it maybe considering 12 parts for each layout item. And so I want to control. So what we do, size, right? So if you think that the page is 12 parts, that this should occupy 4 parts, and I want this to occupy 4 parts and this to occupy 4 parts. Right now, the equal distribution in that row will happen. Right? But padding, it's better to give the padding, horizontal padding. So for that, go to the Lightning Design System website. Under utilities, we can see padding styles. Maybe we need the horizontal padding. Go to utilities, go to padding, horizontal padding. So let's say I want more. I think this will be sufficient. Copy, go here. For each and every layout item, I want the padding to be applied. That much horizontal padding means some space it will give. Okay, it is saved. Now just a refresh. So you're seeing this, right? Enter email, enter mobile search. I think it's looking fine, right? Now I think look and feel wise, okay, it is looking fine. And now we need to think. We are going to enter email and mobile and click on search. It has to make one of the method call. In that method, by taking this either email or mobile, it is going to query and return the result. Right? So for that, first we are going to write some Apex logic. First, create a class. Let's have fun. Apex class. I'm giving the name as contact. It's a SH controller. First of all, maybe deploy. Associate that class in the component. Controller associated this component with that controller. Okay, so now after on click, we are going to call this function. Still, we need to define in the controller JS. From that to call for searching, right? So maybe we need to define a method, right? So let's define. Close it. Aura enable. Say define this. Okay. So now here, let's say search contact. Okay. Let's say this is the method name, and this should take 2 inputs. Okay. So now string and email, string mobile number. Okay. We take those two and read it. Based on this, we search it, and we are going to return the contact. Right. So we search for one of the contact and return the contact. So that's what we do. Okay. So maybe for now, for saving purpose, I'll say return null. We decide later what to return. Okay. So most of the times we're writing like this so far. So with some experience when we gain, let's say client want to add one more field here to search either email or mobile number, or let's say last name also they're asking to add as an enhancement. That time, if you want to change the signature of this method, again it is like a hectic job because there might be a test class for this. So if you change this and that test class where it is referred, that will be spoiled, or due to this, from where this is called, that component, that JS logic also we have to change, and everything we have to change. We have to touch many things. If you are changing a signature of the method, means it's a huge work. To avoid that, so as a framework, right, so blindly we see most of the situations always as part of the enhancement. There is a need to enter more inputs into the method to achieve the requirement. So what I can suggest instead of using this, okay, removing. So I recommend you to take like this string dot object, say input map. Okay, so now in this, whatever the first name, whatever the last name, they have to supply. Not only 2 parameters, 10 parameters in future if they want to supply, they can supply. There is no change in the signature of this method. Okay, so that will be better. Okay, so now here, so all we need to have here, so with which name someone is supplying the values into this method. So we need to read by using that. Okay, let's say in order to use this, so whoever is maybe decided to use this method should know what are the name of the key they are supplying. Anyway, the corresponding value can be either email or either mobile number, or it is a number, or it is a date, or anything. It becomes object means it can accept anything. To read from that input map dot get, right? So in the map, let's say they are giving email as a key, and the value they are going to supply associated to that. We do that, and let's say here, say string email is equal to, but it is coming in the object generic format, typecasting. So that way, so now this way, the email, whatever they supplied is there. So let's say they are also going to supply mobile, comma, again typecast that mobile. Right? So that's what we do. Okay, so here, what is wrong here? We have to define mobile variable. Right? Mobile. This is one variable we are assigning by getting the value from the map, comma, one more variable with the same type and getting mobile and trip. So like this, if you follow, maybe you can avoid such kind of issues when there is a need, when you feel that there might be a change which we need to accept a few more parameters. Okay, so that's it. And now let's generate the query. But in the query should be dynamic. Maybe I don't want to add both filters. Only if the email is not blank or mobile is not blank, only that time I want to add that as a filter. Unnecessarily, if they supply both as blank, I don't want to apply filter. Right? Let's say. So to generate the dynamic query, we prepare the query in the string format. Right? So what is the basic query without filter? So maybe let's write here. Okay, select ID, comma. Let's say in the results, after searching in the results, we are going to refer ID, comma, name. Let's say lead source or whatever. Say title. Let's say these things we need to show on the UI. After searching, if you find something from content. This is the basic query. Okay, now let's say string filter. Filter is not there. By default, filter is not there. This we play dynamically. Is the really the mobile number email is there? I'm checking. String dot is blank of email. If the email is blank, I don't want it. Not blank. There is a method. If the email is not blank, then I want to add, right? I want to add that into the filter, right? So now this is a first filter, right? In the where, is it a first condition or a second condition? Right? How we know? So what I'll do here, I'm going to use a ternary operator. Now I'm checking here. String dot is blank. The filter is blank, right? That means so far nothing is there in that. Right? That means first we're adding the first filter. This email as a first filter. And now here we should have a space after this query, right? Space and where should come, because this is the first filter where email is equal to colon, right? Dynamic variable, if you give, we use colon. Now anyway, this one also we are going to give as a string. What is our variable name? Email. But runtime when this string is executed, since after colon we are giving this, it will look for that variable. Is there any email variable is there? It will take that value. Okay. So if the filter is not there, that means first filter we are adding, that time we have to keep where email is equal to whatever email supplied into this method. Else situation. Right? That means already there is a where condition. Okay. One more if you want to add, we say end email is equal to the email. Sorry. So like that. Right? Same thing. Mobile also. Mobile. So if the mobile is not blank, again we don't know, maybe if this is not satisfied, that time the mobile will be the first condition, right? We repeat the same way, where mobile, the filter is blank. Already, let's say this is satisfied. So maybe that time this will be like, we need this. We don't want to again keep where mobile, and then we have a variable mobile. Okay, this is a field name. So basically on the contact, you don't find any field with the name mobile. You go and check. I think the mobile API name will be mobile phone. Okay, anyway, that will give runtime error. So maybe we need to fix, all those things will happen. Now, after all these things, when I want to add this filter to this query, if it is not entered into these two conditions, the filter will be blank, right? So that time unnecessarily, so I don't want to apply anything, right? So now what I'll do, so I'm going to check if, I'll say string dot is not blank of filter. If the filter is not blank, that means some filter is there. Only that time to this query, right? Is equal to adding this filter. Right? You know, query is equal to query plus filter. It will concatenate. Now here we have the final filter. If there is no filter, right? Do we need to query and return? Unnecessarily, if there is no filter, what will happen? There is no filter and it will query for all contacts and return, which is bad. I want to query only the filter is there, right? Only query if the filter is there. So now here only I'm writing logic to query. So maybe for sure, maybe since we are generating dynamically, we want to understand how the query is final query is rendered. Okay, so just I'm printing as a developer to see what it is giving. Finally, query. The query in the string format to run, we use database.query. This one we call as dynamic SQL. Dynamically at runtime, right? At the time of executing the code only, the final query will be decided and will be executed. It will result in, we know the query is on the contact, it will result the list of contacts, right? So it will result in the list of contacts, right? So list of contact, say contacts, okay? So now, so the list of contacts are there, fine. So let's say the filter is not there. That means both they entered blank in worst case. That time I want to return a message. That time I don't want to return the list of contacts. Right? If everything is fine, we'll return the list of contacts. Okay, let's say if both are not entered that time, I want to return a string saying the filters are not added. Right? I think you have to enter the filter values to switch. Something like that, one message we need to send. If that is the situation, how we use this method, maybe one time we have to return the list of contact. In some situations, we need to return a string. But we will be having only one return type, right? How we deal in success scenario, lead up, maybe list of contact, error scenario, returning the string. If we give return type like this, it is not possible. Okay? For that also, one of the solution. That mostly we face this problem in the projects day to day. Okay, this also I recommend you to do like this. If you do like this, what will happen? Okay, maybe we just say this as output map. Output map is equal to new map of string comma object. So let's say I'm expecting to return the list of contacts, right? Name and value pair. Right? We give like this in the map. We are going to return message, maybe error message. Okay. By default, error message is null. Okay, so now what I'll do into this map, if this is executed, everything is fine. So to that, I think we give the name as output map. Output map dot put is a key context. Maybe same key, if I repeat, it will be replacing existing. Right? So contacts and whatever the contacts for it that we are assigned. Else, right? There is no filter. That means none of the email or mobile number entered. That time, I want to return the error message. Right? error message. We'll say filters are not applied. That is the message we are written. And also maybe if you want to return either it is success or failure, is success. By default, I will say false. It's not succeeded. Right? Only we say it is succeeded when we add this. Right now, if you see due to the return type whatever we are taking, we can return multiple values at a time by using the same method. That is one of the advantages. Finally, what we do, right? In case of anyway, in error scenario, by default, I am saying it is success false, right? No need to add that. Finally, return this. So this is how, in general, if you follow, we don't struggle on doing development and changing these things. Okay. So that's it. Now, maybe before we use this in the component, let's say, really is it working? We need to test, right? So go to developer console. Here, maybe just call it and see really is it working. Class name dot. It is a static method. Switch context. Right, it is expecting a map as input new map of string comma object, and then to this we need to supply email and mobile number. Let's say I'm only supplying email, right? I'm not supplying mobile, only supplying email. Okay, so do you have any give one email which is there for one of the contact? So let's say this email we are using, copy, supply. Now when you call this, right? Again we are printing in the debug. Okay, so we are expecting this map as response in that C is success true. And in the context, you'll see the context what it is query. Right? So let's execute. I think I should not give this semicolon because the number one. System.debug. Okay, this is the method. Okay, so here I map we have to separate like this. Okay, execute. Now if you see in the return whatever error message null is success true. Contacts I think ID and the name. Maybe for lead source and title whatever those are having null values. That's why nothing is there. I think in between we also printed query in this, right? I think the query is also in a proper way. It worked fine. So that means so we have the confidence on using this. We have to call this from the component. Right? Now we need to implement this on such that controller. Right? So on such here we need to call this method. This is a signature of that. Okay, we'll call that in our next session. Okay, so before ending today, so any questions, anyone? And also maybe next week we'll maybe close these Aura sessions because the future is LWC. I think it makes sense if I spend more time with the LWC than Aura. it's like a almost going to die after a few years. But why we are maybe discussing? Already there are many projects. Already there are many existing Aura components. Maybe to deal with those kind of things, whatever we are dealing is useful. Almost whatever we are discussing, these are more than sufficient for that. Maybe next week, the remaining important concepts we'll discuss. Later, more time we spend on LWC. That is the future. Okay. Before ending today, any questions, anyone? So, any one of you did you try to work on this assignment? Are able to do this assignment?
I started, but I didn't finish, so it was probably on the weekend I'll finish. This is small, I know, but just start today. I just create the component, add it to the record page, printing something in the component, but still I haven't added the flag.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, you want me to add a few more?
Yeah, I think it would be good. I think today was a good exercise trying to do it by myself. So I think it's a good idea. At least you give us an idea, and so to practice, and I think it's good. Yeah.
Okay. I think so far we are not started with the data table. So anyway, I think I have to give one example on that. Okay. So maybe what I'll do, I will add an assignment maybe after this session and update. Okay. Maybe look into that repository, and based on that you can work on it. Okay. Because I have few scenarios on data table, but still we did not discuss that. Maybe I'll come up with other things. Okay. For now, I'm going to commit this, and we will continue on Monday. Okay. So I think you should see these changes. Okay. Let me add this, and again I'll push. Okay. You can look into that and go. Thank you.
Thank you, Shinir.